The massive quarantine dome loomed over New Geneva's skyline, its translucent surface reflecting the setting sun in shades of amber and gold. Inside, Dr. Elena Torres stood before the observation window, her dark eyes fixed on the readings that scrolled endlessly across the holographic display. The numbers told a story more frightening than any she had encountered in her 15 years as Earth's leading xenoimmunologist. The Zenithian delegation had arrived 3 weeks ago seeking help. Their species, advanced in ways humans could only dream of, faced extinction from a plague that defied their most sophisticated medical technology. Ambassador Nixis, their lead diplomat, now lay in the isolation chamber behind the window, her crystalline skin having lost its characteristic purple luminescence. Dr. Torres, Nixis called out, her melodic voice weakened by illness. The others. How many remain? Elena pressed her hand against the window, wishing she could offer more than words of comfort. The stasis chambers are holding. We have 23 of your people stabilized, but the disease progression continues, just slower. She didn't mention the 4 who hadn't survived the journey to Earth. The ambassador's faceted eyes flickered with determination. We knew the risk when we chose Earth. Your species, your resilience. The legends speak of your ability to adapt to anything. Elena moved to the communication panel, adjusting it so she could speak more easily with her patient. Ambassador, we've discovered something unusual in our latest analysis. Human blood samples show natural resistance to the pathogen, but it's not just antibodies. There's something about our cellular structure that actively repels the virus. Nixis attempted to sit up, her crystalline form catching the light in fractured patterns. This confirms the ancient texts. They spoke of a bond between our peoples, long ago. A biological compatibility that saved us once before. The historical records you provided mention a joining of essences, Elena said, bringing up the translated documents on her tablet. We thought it was metaphorical, but what if? A sudden alarm cut through their conversation. Nixis's vital signs were dropping rapidly, her crystalline form dulling to an ashen gray. Elena's fingers flew across the control panel, initiating emergency protocols. Dr. Torres, Dr. Rajesh Kumar's voice came through her earpiece. The latest test results are in. The human genetic resistance isn't just passive, it's actively adaptive. But simple transfusions aren't enough. We need something more comprehensive. Elena watched as the medical drones administered stabilizing compounds to Nixis. What are you suggesting, Raj? The Zenithian texts mention a biological merge, a sharing of genetic material through sustained physical contact. Their ancestors called it soul binding. We dismissed it as primitive mysticism, but the molecular analysis suggests that it might be the key to transfer our resistance, Elena finished, her mind racing through the implications. But that would require prolonged physical contact between a human and Zenithian host, Raj confirmed. Not just a simple touch. Their biology requires something more intimate, a genuine connection that allows for deep cellular exchange. Elena looked at Nixis, who had stabilized but remained desperately ill. The ambassador's eyes met hers, and Elena knew she had heard everything through the communication system. Your people have a saying, Nixis whispered. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Would you be willing, Dr. Torres? To attempt what our ancestors once did? Elena pressed her hand against the glass again, studying the being on the other side. Zenithians were humanoid in basic form, but their crystalline biology made them seem almost ethereal. The idea of establishing the kind of connection the ancient texts described was daunting, yet fascinating. The risk to you would be minimal, Nixis continued. Our records show no adverse effects on the human partners in the past. But I understand if. I'll do it, Elena interrupted, her voice firm. Not just for you, Ambassador. If we can prove this works, we can save your entire species. The potential benefits to medical science, to interspecies relations. She took a deep breath. We'll need to modify the isolation chamber, create a controlled environment for sustained contact. Raj's voice returned, excitement barely contained. I'll begin preparations immediately. Elena. This could change everything we know about xenobiology. As the medical team rushed to reconfigure the chamber, Elena began removing her protective outer gear. Through the window, she saw new strength in Nixus's eyes, the first glimmer of hope since the Zenithians had arrived on Earth. You truly are remarkable, Nixus said softly. Your species. You don't just survive. You reach out to help others survive too. Elena smiled as she entered the preparation chamber. That's what makes us human, Ambassador. We never face the darkness alone, and we won't let you face it alone either. The airlock cycled, and humanity's first attempt at saving an alien species through biological bonding began. The biomonitors chimed, drawing their attention. On the screens, complex molecular diagrams showed the first signs of successful genetic transfer. Elena's natural immunity was beginning to merge with Nixus's cellular structure, creating something entirely new. Extraordinary, Dr. Kumar's voice came through the speakers. The genetic exchange is happening at a quantum level. It's not just biological, there's some kind of energy transfer occurring that our instruments can barely detect. Elena felt it, a warm, tingling sensation that spread from their connected hands throughout her body. Nixus's crystalline skin had begun to regain some of its purple luminescence, the first positive sign they'd seen since the Zenithians arrived on Earth. There's something else, Nixus said softly. The ancient texts spoke of this: when the bond is formed, both parties gain understanding beyond mere biology. We begin to see ourselves, and each other, in new ways. Elena nodded, understanding perfectly. Through their connection, she was experiencing not just Nixus's memories, but her way of perceiving reality. The world through Zenithian senses was a symphony of light and vibration, each atom singing its own unique song. Your cellular structure, Nixus continued, wonder in her voice, it's not just resistant to the plague. It's adaptive, constantly evolving. Every moment, your body learns, changes, grows stronger. This is why your species survives where others would fall. The hours passed in a blur of shared consciousness and gradual transformation. The medical team watched in amazement as Nixus's vital signs steadily improved. The plague virus, visible under quantum microscopes, began to break down in the presence of the hybrid genetic structure forming within the ambassador's cells. When they finally broke contact, Elena felt different, changed in ways she couldn't quite articulate. She knew she would never see the universe quite the same way again. And Nixus, though still weak, was sitting up straight, her crystalline form glowing with renewed life. The preliminary results are remarkable, Dr. Tanaka reported excitedly. The plague virus is being systematically eliminated from Ambassador Nixus's system. And the genetic changes, they appear to be self-sustaining. This isn't just a temporary fix, it's a true evolutionary adaptation. We need to prepare for the others, Elena said, her mind already racing ahead to the logistics of treating the remaining Zenithian patients. But first, we need to document everything, understand exactly what happened here. This could revolutionize our approach to interspecies medicine. Nixus reached out, taking Elena's hand once more. No memories flowed this time, but the connection still hummed with potential. What happened here goes beyond medicine, Dr. Torres. Our peoples have rediscovered something profound, a way of connecting that transcends biological differences. Perhaps this plague, terrible as it is, has given us a gift, the chance to remember that we are not so different after all. As the medical team buzzed with activity around them, Elena squeezed Nixus's hand gently. Together, they had done more than find a cure. They had opened a door to a new era of human-alien relations, one where the boundaries between species might fade in the light of shared understanding and mutual trust. modified isolation chamber hummed with energy, its walls now lined with bioresonance panels that glowed with a soft, pulsing light. Dr. Elena Torres stood before the final decontamination barrier, watching as Dr. Kumar made the last adjustments to the environmental controls. The chamber is calibrated to enhance cellular receptivity, Raj explained, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. We've recreated the conditions described in the ancient texts, a combination of electromagnetic frequencies and pheromone-enriched atmosphere that should facilitate the biological merger. Elena nodded, her heart racing with equal parts anticipation and scientific curiosity. Through the observation window, she could see Ambassador Nixis waiting, the Zenithian's crystalline form catching the light in ways that made her seem almost ethereal. The monitoring systems are online, Dr. Yuki Tanaka called from her station. We'll be tracking every molecular change, every quantum fluctuation. If this works, we'll have the first documented case of intentional cross-species genetic adaptation. Elena took a deep breath, centering herself. Remember, if anything goes wrong, we'll extract you immediately, Raj assured her. But Elena, try not to think of this as just a medical procedure. The texts emphasized the importance of genuine connection. The Zenithians believe that the soul binding only works when both parties are truly open to it. The airlock cycled, and Elena stepped into the chamber. The air felt different here, thicker, charged with potential. Nixis turned to face her, the ambassador's faceted eyes reflecting countless tiny rainbows. Dr. Torres, Nixis's voice was weak but carried an undercurrent of hope. You honor us with your courage. Elena moved closer, noticing how the bioresonance panels responded to their proximity, the light pulsing more intensely. How do we begin? In our traditions, Nixis explained, the soul binding starts with understanding. We must know each other's essence before our bodies can truly connect. They sat facing each other on the specially designed biobed, close enough that Elena could see the intricate patterns that ran through Nixis's crystalline skin. The ambassador raised her hands, palms up, in what Elena recognized as a traditional Zenithian greeting. May I share with you? Nixis asked. Elena placed her hands above Nixis's, not quite touching. Yes. The moment their hands met, Elena gasped. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if every cell in her body had suddenly become aware of itself and of the foreign yet fascinating biology before her. Through their connected hands, she could feel echoes of Nixis's thoughts, fragments of memories. She saw vast crystal cities floating in the clouds of the Zenithian homeworld, felt the joy of first flight with gossamer wings now lost to evolution, experienced the deep communal bonds that defined their society. And through it all, she felt Nixis's desperate fear for her people, the weight of responsibility as their ambassador, and the glimmer of hope that this ancient solution might save them. Your memories, Elena whispered, they're beautiful. Nixis's skin brightened slightly, a sign of emotional response. And I see yours. Your world, so diverse, so full of life and struggle and triumph. Your people's determination to overcome every obstacle. Your personal journey, the loss of your parents to disease that drove you to become a doctor, your dedication to saving others. The New Geneva Medical Center's conference room buzzed with tension as Dr. Elena Torres presented the preliminary results to the assembled team of human doctors and healthy Zenithian representatives. Holographic displays showed the remarkable transformation in Ambassador Nixis's cellular structure, now a beautiful hybrid of crystalline and human patterns. The bonding process not only halted the plague's progression, Elena explained, highlighting key data points in the floating display, but it's created a new form of immunity that appears to be permanent. Ambassador Nixis's body has completely integrated the adaptive properties of human genetics. First Commander VYX, the highest-ranking Zenithian still healthy enough to stand, stepped forward. His crystalline form shifted colors with his emotions, currently displaying swirls of deep blue concern. But this process requires intimate mental and physical contact between our species. We have 22 others in stasis. Are there enough human volunteers willing to undertake such a profound connection with aliens? Dr. Kumar cleared his throat. We've already received over 300 applications from medical personnel worldwide. The human spirit of scientific curiosity and compassion continues to amaze me. It's more than just medical personnel, Elena added. Military officers, diplomats, scientists from every field, they understand the historic importance of this moment. This isn't just about saving lives, it's about forging lasting bonds between our species. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent alert from the quarantine wing. Elena's heart raced as she read the incoming data. 3 of the stasis chambers are showing signs of failure. The plague is adapting, becoming more aggressive. We need to begin the next round of treatments immediately, Dr. Tanaka insisted. We've already selected and prepared the most compatible human volunteers. Commander Vyx's color shifted to a determined purple. I will be the first. As leader, I must demonstrate trust in our human allies. The next hours were a blur of activity as they prepared 3 isolation chambers for simultaneous bonding procedures. Elena supervised each setup, ensuring the bioresonance fields were properly calibrated. She couldn't help but remember her own experience with Nixus, the profound connection that had changed her understanding of both species. Dr. Marcus Webb, a veteran trauma surgeon, was paired with Commander Vyx. Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez, a military xenobiologist, would bond with the Zenithian cultural attaché. The third chamber was prepared for Dr. James Chen, a quantum physicist, and a Zenithian medical officer. Remember, Elena briefed them, this isn't just a physical process. The bond requires genuine openness, a willingness to truly know and be known. The Zenithians will share their memories, their perceptions, their very essence with you. And you must do the same. As the procedures began, Elena monitored all 3 chambers from the central control room. The bioresonance fields hummed with energy, creating the perfect environment for cross-species genetic transfer. On her screens, she could see the first tentative moments of contact, the initial shock of connection that she remembered so well. But something was different this time. In Chamber 2, Lieutenant Rodriguez's vital signs suddenly spiked. The Zenithian cultural attaché's crystalline form began to flash with alarming patterns of red and black. Something's wrong, Elena announced, fingers flying across the control panel. The genetic transfer in Chamber 2 is being rejected. Their cellular structures are fighting each other instead of merging. Dr. Kumar rushed to her side, analyzing the data. The plague virus, it's mutating in response to the attempted bond. It's learning from our intervention. Elena made a split-second decision. Initiate emergency separation in Chamber 2. Sustain the procedures in 1 and 3, they're still stable. She grabbed a protective suit and headed for the airlock. I need to get in there and assess the situation directly. Inside Chamber 2, Lieutenant Rodriguez was barely conscious, her body in shock from the failed bonding attempt. The Zenithian attaché's crystalline form had dulled to an ominous gray, worse than before the procedure began. As Elena worked to stabilize both patients, her mind raced through possibilities. The plague wasn't just a disease, it was an intelligent pathogen, capable of adapting to their treatment methods. They had achieved one success with Nixus, but scaling up the cure wouldn't be as simple as they'd hoped. Back in the control room, after both patients were stabilized, Elena faced the grim faces of her team. We need to understand why the first bond worked and this one failed. There must be something unique about the connection between Nixus and me, something we haven't identified yet. Ambassador Nixus, now fully recovered, placed a crystalline hand on Elena's shoulder. Perhaps we've been too focused on the biological aspects. The ancient texts speak of compatibility beyond the physical, a resonance of spirits, a harmony of souls. Elena stared at the data scrolling across her screens, remembering the profound connection she'd shared with Nixus. Then we need to completely rethink our approach to matching pairs. It's not enough to just look for biological compatibility. We need to find humans and Zenithians who can truly connect on a deeper level. The failed bonding had shown them the stakes were even higher than they'd imagined. They weren't just fighting a plague, they were racing against an adaptive enemy that could learn from their every move. And somewhere in the mystery of human-Zenithian connection lay the key to saving not just lives, but perhaps the future of interspecies relations itself. The holographic map in the research lab pulsed with streams of data as Dr. Elena Torres and Ambassador Nixis studied the patterns of successful and failed bonding attempts. Over the past week, they had managed 3 more successful bonds, but lost 2 patients to the plague's accelerated mutation. Time was running out for the remaining Zenithians in stasis. "There's something we're missing," Elena muttered, manipulating the 3D display with practiced gestures. "Look at the quantum signatures during our bonding compared to the others. Even the successful ones don't show the same level of cellular harmony." Nixis moved closer, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the lab walls. "Perhaps we should review the moment of our initial connection. There was something different about our circumstances." Dr. Kumar entered the lab, carrying fresh analysis reports. "Elena, we've completed the comparative study of all bonding attempts. There's an interesting correlation between emotional states during initial contact and the strength of the genetic transfer." Elena's eyes widened as she overlaid the new data onto their existing models. "Of course. Nixis, when we first bonded, neither of us was thinking about the scientific implications. I was genuinely terrified of losing you, of failing to save your people. And you. I was in awe of your willing sacrifice," Nixis completed. "Your immediate decision to help, despite the unknown risks. The other bonds, they've been too clinical, too measured." Dr. Tanaka's voice came urgently through the intercom. "Dr. Torres, we have a problem. The stasis field around the remaining patients is weakening. The plague is somehow feeding off the containment energy." Elena rushed to the quarantine wing, Nixis close behind. Through the observation window, they could see the stasis chambers flickering, the Zenithians inside showing signs of deterioration. The plague virus had evolved beyond their ability to contain it. "The pathogen isn't just adapting anymore," Dr. Chen reported, pointing to the quantum microscope display. "It's using our own containment energy to strengthen itself. Every measure we take to fight it only makes it stronger." Elena watched in horror as the stasis fields continued to weaken. They had hours, maybe less, before total failure. 16 Zenithian lives hung in the balance, with no time to carefully match compatible pairs or prepare proper bonding protocols. Then it hit her. "We've been fighting this the wrong way. We've been trying to control everything, to make it a perfect scientific process. But the first successful bond happened in a moment of crisis, of genuine emotional connection." Nixis's form brightened with understanding. "The ancient texts. They don't speak of careful preparation or matched pairs. They tell of moments of desperate need, of beings reaching out to each other across the void of difference." "Exactly," Elena said, her mind racing. "The plague adapts to our controlled attempts because they're predictable, mathematical. But true emotional connection, genuine care for another being, that's chaos theory in action. It's unpredictable, impossible to adapt to." She turned to the assembled medical team. "We need to wake them all. Now. And we need every human volunteer who's willing to take this risk to come forward. No more compatibility tests, no more careful matching. Just beings choosing to help each other, no matter the cost. The risk would be enormous," Dr. Kumar warned. "Simultaneous mass revival, unrestricted bonding attempts, we could lose them all." "They'll die anyway if we do nothing," Elena countered. "Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs in medicine come not from careful control, but from letting go and trusting in human, and Zenithian, nature." The next hour was controlled chaos as they prepared for the mass revival. Human volunteers from every department of the facility stepped forward, ready to attempt bonds with the dying Zenithians. Elena coordinated from the central control room, watching as the stasis fields were systematically lowered. "Remember," she broadcast to all chambers, "don't think about the science. Don't worry about the procedure. Focus on the being in front of you. See them, know them, reach out to them with everything you are." The monitors exploded with data as 16 bonds were attempted simultaneously. Energy readings went off the charts as human and Zenithian genetic patterns clashed, merged, separated, and reformed in completely unpredictable ways. The plague virus, faced with chaos instead of order, began to show signs of confusion in its adaptation patterns. "It's working," Dr. Tanaka called out. "The virus can't adapt to all these different patterns at once. It's breaking down in multiple patients." Elena watched in amazement as the success rate climbed. 12, 13, 14 successful bonds formed in rapid succession. Different from her connection with Nixus, each one unique, but all driven by the same basic truth, the genuine desire to help another being. In the end, they lost 2 Zenithians whose condition had been too far gone. But 14 survived, their crystalline forms glowing with renewed life, forever changed by their connection with humanity. And humanity had been changed as well, learning that sometimes the greatest scientific achievements come not from careful control, but from letting go and trusting in the power of genuine connection. 6 months after the mass bonding event, the New Geneva Medical Center had transformed into the first interspecies medical research institute. The central atrium, once a stark and clinical space, now sparkled with the crystalline architecture of Zenithian design merged with human engineering. Dr. Elena Torres stood at the podium, addressing a mixed audience of humans and Zenithians at the institute's official opening ceremony. "What began as a desperate attempt to save lives has evolved into something far more profound," Elena said, gesturing to the assembled crowd. "Every successful bond between our species has taught us something new, not just about medicine, but about the true nature of healing." Ambassador Nixus, now the head of Zenithian Human Relations, stood beside her. The ambassador's crystalline form had permanently retained traces of human genetic patterns, creating stunning iridescent swirls that marked all the survivors of the plague. These changes weren't just cosmetic, they represented a fundamental evolution in Zenithian biology. "The plague forced us to reach across the boundaries of species," Nixus addressed the gathering, her melodic voice carrying easily through the space. "But what we found there wasn't just a cure. We discovered that the ancient stories of our people's connection weren't myths, they were a blueprint for our future." Dr. Kumar stepped forward to present the latest research findings. The holographic displays showed the remarkable developments that had emerged from studying the bonded pairs. The hybrid genetic structures we're seeing aren't just resistant to the plague. They've created entirely new possibilities for medical treatment across species. Diseases that once devastated entire populations can now be approached from completely new angles. But the medical breakthroughs were only part of the story. The bonds formed during the crisis had created lasting connections between the participants. Human doctors found themselves able to intuitively understand Zenithian physiology. Zenithian healers discovered they could sense human emotional states with unprecedented clarity. These connections had sparked a renaissance in interspecies communication and cooperation. "We've established similar research centers on 3 other worlds," Elena continued. "The technique of crisis bonding has already saved thousands of lives across different species. But more importantly, it's teaching us that the boundaries between species are more fluid than we ever imagined." Lieutenant Rodriguez, one of the survivors of the failed early attempts, now led the training program for new medical teams. Her experience had proven invaluable in understanding both the risks and potential of interspecies bonding. "We don't just teach medical procedures anymore," she explained to the audience. "We teach understanding, empathy, and the art of genuine connection." The ceremony took an unexpected turn when Commander Vyx announced the Zenithian High Council's decision. In recognition of this new era of cooperation, we are establishing permanent settlements on Earth. Our peoples will live and work together, learning from each other, growing together. The plague tried to end our species. Instead, it has helped us evolve into something greater. After the formal presentations, Elena found a quiet moment with Nixus in the research garden. The space had been designed to accommodate both human and Zenithian biological needs, creating a stunning hybrid ecosystem that symbolized their new relationship. "Did you ever imagine," Nixus asked, "watching the Earth's sunset paint the crystals with warm light, that your decision to help one dying alien would lead to all this?" Elena smiled, touching the small crystalline growth that had become a permanent part of her own biology, a mark of her bond with Nixus. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the smallest moments of connection. Every human who volunteered, every Zenithian who trusted us, they all took a leap of faith. The garden's hybrid plants sparkled in the fading light, their DNA a beautiful mix of Earth and Zenithian genetics, just like the beings who had created them. The plague had tried to destroy one species but had instead forged an unbreakable bond between two. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they seemed to shine with new possibility, not just for humans and Zenithians, but for all species who might one day learn that the greatest strength comes not from isolation, but from reaching out across the void to connect with others. "The universe is changing," Nixus observed, her form glowing softly in the twilight. "And we're changing with it." Together, Elena agreed, watching as more hybrid ships arrived in the distance, carrying new volunteers, new possibilities, and new hopes for a future where the boundaries between species were no longer barriers, but bridges to something greater than any one race could achieve alone.